In this video, we cover image-based lighting using Arnold Sky. What is image-based lighting? Basically, you are using a 360 degrees high dynamic range image in formats like EXR or HDR to illuminate your scene. This method provides the most realistic lighting and it's widely used in rendering. As always, I use ACES as my color manager in the scene. I have also applied a simple Lambert shader to all the geometries. Let's run the IPR. And as we have no light source in the scene, we get a black render. The first thing you need to do is to create an Arnold Sky. By default, you have this white environment because the color mode is set to constant and you only can define a color to be used as your environment. You can use a simple color if it works for you, or maybe you just want a simple color to fill in the dark parts of your render. Now, in order to use an image to illuminate your environment, you need to click on this small triangle besides color and change the color type from constant to texture or shader network. Let me change it to texture for now. Now we need to load the spherical or HDRI image here. Let's use the sunset HDR image. Now, as you can see, we have loaded this image and our scene is being illuminated using this texture. The HDRI image is visible in the viewport. We can simply select the Arnold Sky and rotate it until we get the desired lighting from the HDRI. We can set the H rotation of the sky to around 70 degrees. And now we get this very natural lighting from this HDRI that would be impossible without image-based lighting. And the cool thing is each HDRI that you load here, you would get a different look. We can increase the diffuse ray depth to about 2 to fill out some of those dark parts where the direct light has a hard time reaching. The problem with loading your HDRI image directly like this is that you don't have any control over your texture. Like, you cannot color correct it. But if you change the color type to shader network, now you can load your texture through an Arnold shader network. So let's go to the material manager, create menu, Arnold texture, and create an image shader. Now double click on the image and load the same sunset HDR. As we are using ACES, the color space for HDR images need to be utility linear sRGB. And now let's select our Arnold Sky and drag this texture to the color field. We can rotate the sky to get the angle that we like. In this case, I want to see the sun behind the house directly. Obviously, you can control the intensity and exposure of the Arnold Sky using the intensity and exposure parameters like other lights. So when you increase the intensity, you get a brighter image, and as you decrease it, the image and illumination becomes darker. And as I reduce the intensity to something like 0.05, because you are using a high dynamic range image, the sun is still bright and punchy. And this is why you can use this method to simulate different times of the day. Let's use another HDRI. You can load this Fright Station HDRI, which is a free HDRI from hdrihaven.com, and set the rotation to around 320 degrees probably. And now we get a completely different look, which is incredible. Then we have resolution, which we discussed, and you should set the resolution close to the actual resolution of the image. The HDR I'm using is about 4000 pixel wide, so we can type in 4000, but for faster renders, let me just leave it at 1000 for now. The next option is the format of your HDRI image. The image I loaded is a latitude-longitude image, so the width is twice as long as the height. If your image is in another format like mirrored ball or angular, you need to change the format right here. Samples obviously controls the quality of direct lighting from this Arnold Sky. Right now we get some noise from the sky, so let's increase the samples to around 4. Normally 3 or 4 is good enough. And now we should get a much cleaner image. Now, using the camera contribution option, you can hide the HDR image from the camera, and this way we only see the illumination caused by this image and not the image itself. Now let's open up the shader network for the image that we apply to our sky. And this is where you find out why we set the color type in the sky to shader network, because we can adjust the texture as we like. For example, I can color correct this HDR image to my liking in the network editor. So I'm gonna press Ctrl Tab and search for a color correct node and press enter to add it. Connect the output of the image node to the input of the color correct node and connect the color correct node to the Arnold Beauty port. And now I can adjust the image the way I want. For example, I can decrease the gamma value to something like 0.8 and produce more contrast and sharper shadows if I wanted to. Maybe change the hue or reduce the overall saturation. So as you can see, the shader network mode is the preferable type compared to the texture mode. In this case, I'm going to set the gamma to around 0.9 and this would be enough for now. You can go ahead and try a few other HDRIs to get different looks. Now for the final render, we can set the camera samples to around 6, diffuse samples to around 4 or 5, and let's see what we get. Okay, and that's a nice render. I'm gonna render the scene with a few HDRIs and save out those renders as well, and you can try different HDRIs on your own and get a few different looks. So in this lesson, we discussed Arnold sky and image-based lighting. See you in the next one.